First of all, do I think that Boris Johnson was obliged to go all that time back with Partygate and the lying and so on? I think probably yes. I think Boris had become his own worst enemy. He wasn't listening to advice, and he was he was badly advised, and his own personality failings got in the way of the business of government. In fact, if anything, he delayed going for too long. Once hailed as the Tories' golden boy, and undoubtedly still the best thing they've got, the man who bulldozed red walls, bewitched the capital twice, swaggered through Brexit, Boris Johnson now finds himself pacing the political wilderness, siring children, his former party in freefall, his own legacy a Pandora's box of contradictions, his name flickers in column inches and polling speculation, but the reality is simpler, sadder and more final. Boris is done. And no amount of nostalgic stardust or Churchillian posturing will change that. He may boast of being the first Western leader to truly grasp the peril in Ukraine. He may sneer at Biden's caution and romanticize Trump's missile shipments, but it is in bluster, in the vacuum of consequence. And Johnson's premiership collapsed under the weight of his own deceit, Partygate, Wallpapergate, prorogation, and the poisonous sense of exceptionalism that declared the rules were for others. Even now, his appearances on the world stage ring with the residue of what might have been, a man who found his historical moment only to be dislodged by his own appetite for farce and himself. And then comes the most exquisite political evisceration, not from a rival, but not from an editorial board, but from his ex-wife, Marina Wheeler. In calm, lawyerly prose, she has produced the most devastating metaphorical blow of all, a knife to the back so well timed. Her forthcoming book, A More Perfect Union, is a quiet repudiation of Boris's Brexit, not with barbed invective, but with reason, clarity and vision. She calls the Brexit deal what it truly was, a hasty divorce, scribbled in blood and bombast, not law. She calls for rapprochement, for union, for healing, and it's timed with surgical precision. The one thing Boris got done, just as Boris positions himself as a shadowy kingmaker, whispering sweet foolishness into Kemi Badenoch's ear, and then slice. The knife goes in. The very woman who knew him best declares his most celebrated act was a profound error, in need of reversal, and still the headlines speculate. Could he return? Could the ghost of 2019, that campaign, be resurrected to save the party now languishing behind Farage, the Lib Dems, and ridicule? The answer is no. And the longer Kemi Badenoch hangs on, the more unlikely it is that Boris could ever step in. Maybe a month ago, maybe 2 months ago, but not now. First of all, he's not even an MP. The safe seats are no longer safe. Reform UK has stolen the thunder and the thunderer. Even if he returned, he would walk straight into a 3-month suspension. His electoral magic is spent. He didn't level up, he levelled off. He couldn't hold a government together. Nor restrain his impulses. He brought Liz Truss to power, and in doing so helped finish the job he began, the moral and economic decimation of the Conservative Party. And looming over all this now is a new Boris, stripped of Latin and Latin charm. Nigel Farage, a populist unbothered by the burden of governing. Farage has poached Johnson's base, nicked his rhetoric, stripped off the intellectual varnish to reveal something raw, coarse and electorally potent. Where Boris tried to bestride the populist and the patrician, Farage makes no such attempt. Reform is the party of angry certainty. Johnson, by contrast, is remembered now as the party of lies that fell apart. Boris Johnson still speaking, of course, in Copenhagen, in podcasts, in back-channel whispers to Badenoch, but his voice no longer carries the authority it once did. It echoes now That's the curse of regret. You hear yourself repeating what could have been said, what should have been said. L'esprit d'escalier. He could talk all he likes about Trump's decisiveness or Putin's perfidy, but he will not conceal the fact that he left Britain divided, misled and disillusioned. Marina Wheeler's book may not go down as the final word on Johnson, but it is the most poetic word. Because when the person who knew your heart decides to publish your political obituary, not with venom, but with quiet resolve and analysis, that truly is the knife that does the job. There is no return, only echoes of what could have been.